You don't overthink because you're weak. You overthink because you see something and you don't know what to do with it. You notice the tone shift, the micro delay before a reply, the joke that wasn't a joke, the sudden warmth that feels rehearsed. And the moment you see it, your mind does what high intelligence always does. It tries to finish the pattern. It tries to predict the ending. It tries to protect you in advance. That's the curse. Not that you see patterns early, but that your nervous system treats early pattern detection like a fire alarm. And when that happens, you don't become clearer. You become faster. You become sharper. You become certain. But certainty isn't always intelligence. Sometimes it's fear wearing a suit. In a moment, I'll give you a protocol, 6 parts that separates real social danger from your shadow acting out an old wound. And if you apply it, you'll stop spiraling without becoming naive. Because the goal isn't to trust everyone. The goal is to stop your mind from turning one signal into a life sentence. Here's what most intelligent people won't admit. When you're emotionally activated, your brain doesn't become more logical. It becomes more motivated. It starts searching for proof of what it already fears. You call it pattern recognition, but sometimes it's just pain, organizing facts into a story that keeps you safe. Carl Jung had language for this. He called it the shadow, the parts of you that you don't want to own, so they leak out sideways through judgment, suspicion, contempt, or control. And he warned about projection. Projection is when you can't tolerate something inside you, fear, need, anger, envy, so your psyche paints it onto someone else. That's why you can be right about details and still wrong about the truth, because you're not reading the person, you're defending your identity. And this is where smart people lose the most power. They think the solution is more analysis, but the solution is a filter, a protocol that asks, am I detecting reality or am I reacting to an old scar? Today, you're going to learn how to tell the difference, quietly, cleanly, without drama. This is not about becoming paranoid, and it's not about becoming nice. It's about becoming precise. The protocol is called the Shadow Audit, 6 parts, and each part is designed to do 3 things: protect you from manipulation and social traps, control your emotions so you don't expose yourself, decode what's really happening without guessing. If you've ever been told you're imagining things, this is how you test your perception without spiraling. Part 1. Identify the trigger theme. First, name the theme. Not the person, not the story, the theme. Because your mind doesn't react to events, it reacts to meaning. Most spirals come from a small set of themes: disrespect, abandonment, betrayal, being controlled, being made to look stupid, being replaced, being used. When you can name the theme, you stop drowning in details. Example, your friend cancels again. Your mind says they don't value me, but the theme might be abandonment, or status, or control. Name it in one sentence. This is triggering my fear of blank. Now you're in the driver's seat. Part 2. Find the hidden demand. Every trigger hides a demand for certainty, a demand for loyalty, a demand for fairness, a demand to be chosen, a demand to be respected. The demand is the sentence you never say out loud, but your body is shouting. Ask yourself, what do I need to be true right now to feel safe? Here's the dangerous part. Manipulators don't have to know your trauma. They only have to sense your demand. If your demand is certainty, they keep you in ambiguity. If your demand is loyalty, they keep you competing. If your demand is fairness, they bait you into explaining yourself endlessly. When you see your demand, you stop being a puppet. Part 3. The projection scan. This is the question. What am I assigning to them without proof? Not what I suspect, what I'm assigning. They're disrespecting me. They're trying to control me. They're lying. They're flirting to get something. They're jealous. They want me to fail. Maybe. But projection is when your certainty comes from emotion, not evidence. Jung's point wasn't that your instincts are always wrong. It's that the psyche will protect itself by creating a story that feels safe. So do the humility check. Give 3 alternative explanations that don't insult your intelligence. Example: 1. They're overwhelmed. 2. They're socially clumsy. 3. They're avoiding a hard conversation. If you can't generate alternatives, you're not reading them. You're defending a wound. Part 4. Boundary before explanation. High intelligence people love explanations, and that's exactly why they get trapped. Because explanations invite debate. Boundaries invite revelation. A boundary is a small, clean limit, delivered calmly, with no courtroom energy. Example scripts. I'm not available for that. I'm going to pass. I don't do last-minute changes. If that happens again, I'll step back. I'm not continuing this conversation in that tone. Then you observe. A healthy person adjusts. A manipulative person escalates, guilt trips, mocks, or punishes. You don't need to accuse them. Your boundary becomes the test. Part 5. The evidence ladder. Your mind wants one sign to be enough, but one sign is not a pattern. Here's the ladder. 1 fact is a note. 3 facts is a pattern. 5 facts is a decision. Facts are observable behaviors, not interpretations. They ignored my message is a fact. They don't respect me is an interpretation. They promised and didn't follow through is a fact. They're trying to control me is an interpretation. Build your case like a scientist, quietly, without rage, without needing anyone to validate it. And when you reach 5 facts, you don't argue, you decide. Part 6. Integration. Turn pain into a rule, not a story. If you don't integrate, you ruminate. Rumination is your mind trying to extract a rule without finishing the lesson. Integration is finishing it on purpose. Ask, what is the rule here for my future self? Not, why are people like this? Not, why does this always happen to me? A rule sounds like, I don't chase mixed signals. I don't negotiate for basic respect. I don't over-explain to people who benefit from misunderstanding me. I trust patterns, not apologies. Then you close the loop. You act once, cleanly, and you stop feeding the situation with attention. Because silence is not weakness. Silence is information. You don't need closure from someone committed to misunderstanding you. You need standards. Now listen carefully. Some people don't have pattern recognition. They have contempt. They call it insight. But it's just superiority, using psychology as a weapon. If you always diagnose others but never audit yourself, you're not intelligent, you're defended. Real intelligence has humility because it knows how often the mind lies to protect the ego. That's Jung's deeper point. Individuation isn't becoming perfect, it's becoming honest enough to own your shadow, so it stops owning you. Here's your challenge for the next 7 days. Pick one repeating trigger, one person, one situation, one pattern that keeps hijacking your mind, and run the shadow audit every time. 1. Name the theme. 2. Find the hidden demand. 3. Do the projection scan. 4. Boundary before explanation. 5. Evidence ladder. 6. Integration, pain into rule. If you do this, something changes. You stop reacting like a wounded genius, and you start moving like a disciplined observer. You don't become colder, you become clearer. Because the goal isn't to see patterns early, the goal is to see them and stay in control long enough to act with precision. Your mind isn't broken, it's untrained. Train it, and the curse becomes your advantage.